So how can we actually break free from the trap of materialism? Now, to be explicitly clear, when I'm talking about the perceived trap of materialism, I'm talking about both sides of the coin. I'm talking about what most people believe is materialism, meaning just gross consumerism and believing that the physical material world is basically all there is, and the conditioning that comes with trying to get all of our validation and identity from the material world. That's kind of obvious. What I'm also talking about is the other side of the coin, which is the anti-stance to all of those things. Meaning, oh, these are all just silly material things and we don't need them, and consumerism is bad and materialism is bad, and I'm not my possessions aren't me, to quote Fight Club. I'm not my khakis, so to speak. So what I'm saying is going to be a lot different than probably what people expect and believe, because I think that we don't actually really live in a materialistic kind of world. And I think that our inherent frame towards reality is actually hateful of reality, hateful of the physical world, hateful of the material things. And that is what is showing up and manifesting as this materialism and this consumerism and this really extreme, very ungrounded, very unsustainable, very unconscious behavior. Which again, that root cause, this basic hatred or putting down, that can show up as for and against. Because ultimately, both of these points of views really imply and contain one another. And they're really, on the surface, may appear different, but at the core and at the base level, very much still the same thing. Because if a person really had a love and a reverence and a respect for the material world, then their behavior would be a lot more respectful, a lot more conscientious, a lot more conscious, a lot more expanded and intelligent. And I think if we want to look at what really relating to the material world in a respectful way, we should probably turn back to more indigenous and ancient and traditional cultures. For example, just one super basic, simple example of what I mean is basically we can look at wild ginseng. So this is a really popular herb and has been for thousands of years. And basically it's harvested in the wild. And this is a plant that can live for hundreds of years, basically. So in the past, what people would do if and when they decided to take this plant out of the ground is various cultures had various different ways of leaving an offering or singing or doing a prayer or doing some kind of ritual to respect what that plant was and respect that, oh, I realize I am taking from this. I realize that this plant is giving its life for me. So I'm going to make damn sure that I'm going to do it in the most respectful way and in the way that is the most sustainable for the plant, for the environment, for the ecosystem, and for me, and for generations that come after me. So whether that's leaving some other plant, some other herb, sitting there for a while, doing a whole lot of different things which vary from culture to culture, that would be done with, again, respect, conscientiousness, love, gratitude, and basically just common sense. Because the motive isn't just here and now, it's actually more realistic, which is a much bigger consideration. Now when we look at how ginseng is handled in modern times, people go out into the woods and they just basically are out for money. They're out for profit, or out for paying their bills, which, there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has to pay their bills. That's kind of obvious. It's part of our social contract. And they're just kind of taking it out of the ground. They're having this gross metal tool and they're just hacking into the ground and pulling it out, being like, wow, this is a big one. I'm going to make a lot of money. And then they're out. And maybe they really destroy the ecosystem. They over-harvest. and the lack of awareness is very strong. Or even more extremes, it's farmed industrially and it's planted with big machines and it's harvested with big machines, and basically what happens as a result is the environment is harmed, the environment is mistreated, the plant is harmed and mistreated, and we are in essence screwing ourselves for the long term because of those first two factors. And we're screwing ourselves in the short term because the quality of product that we are getting just keeps getting lower and lower and lower because our focus is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, that we don't even remember what the real quality was, or really what the real quality was even like. So over enough period of time, more and more people forget, more and more of the low quality becomes the norm. So then what happens is, after a while, no one even really remembers or even has any idea that that level of quality could even exist. Because what happens is, if we have a high level of quality, the amount of quantity that we need just goes way, 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 way down. For example, I'm drinking a really high quality tea right now. And for me personally, to buy this tea up front, I think I paid, I don't know, $50 for 2 ounces of loose leaf tea, which a lot of people will be like, $50? I could just go to the store, get a box of tea for $4.99, and that's going to be just as good, right? It's organic, right? When in reality, I paid $50 for 2 ounces of teas, but I'm going to get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cups of tea from that 2 ounces. So when I actually do the math, spending more up front for this tea is actually going to be more cost effective because I'm going to get more out of it. Also, I'm supporting with my money a more sustainable and harmonious way of doing business, of doing farming, of producing tea. I'm supporting an artisan who has dedicated their life to producing a high quality product, and I'm getting more health benefits. I'm getting more physical enjoyment and pleasure, and I'm not experiencing any negative side effects that most people associate with caffeine and all these types of things. So I paid more, but I'm getting way more. And it comes down to a specific mindset. It comes down to each of us empowering ourselves first and foremost, educating ourselves, and also dedicating our lives to creating value for ourselves in our own life, meaning valuing our own gift of life, of being here, of the opportunity to be alive, valuing that enough to invest our time and energy in something, a skill or a craft or a discipline or something that we really enjoy and we really love, that brings us value and allows us to bring value to the lives of other people. And that is a completely different frame than the typical just anti-everything and kind of deeply self-hating kind of mindset. And personally, that's really where I think the solution can be, because ultimately the reality of life is this. I'm wearing clothes, I'm living inside of a house, I'm using a lot of different material things. So I have a choice in how I want to do that. And to say that something is more or less natural than the other, I don't know if we can necessarily say that, because, if we believe certain things are natural, then we should just basically strip off all of our clothes, go sit on a rock somewhere, and then, clothes will crawl on our back, food will fill our belly, things will just show up and land in our lap, but that's not really what happens. So perhaps our idea of what is actually natural isn't really very accurate. Saying that, oh, this car is eco-friendly. It isn't. By definition, it's a car. It might be slightly more eco-friendly based on a certain small set of parameters, but the further we zoom out our parameters, the more we see that actually to say it's eco-friendly or environmentally friendly or sustainable that's more for the mind and less for reality, which is the point that I'm trying to get at through all these different examples and from zooming around from different angles, is that it really comes down to our mindset and the scale at which we are looking and our overall intent. Because our consciousness and our intention and our awareness has an influence and a direct relationship with the physical reality that we experience. So if that intent, if that awareness is based in lack and scarcity and negativity and criticism and hatred and just contraction and putting everything down, that's going to have a ripple effect out through reality. And if our awareness is something different than that, it's also going to have a rippling effect. And this isn't weird. This isn't out there, woo-woo, make-believe. This is just how reality works. And if we can actually arrive at the core of our experience of being a human being, then this is obviously true. This is observably just, oh, this makes sense. So then when it comes to, quote, getting out of the trap of materialism or freeing ourselves from the material world, it might shed some different light upon that. And there are certain things that we can change and certain things that we can't change and certain parameters that we all live within. We can say everything is relative. Okay, but if you jump off a building, you're going to relatively hit the ground at a relative speed, regardless of what your belief system is. If you plant an acorn or you plant a lemon seed, a lemon tree will grow from the lemon seed and an oak tree will grow from the acorn, not the other way around. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to certain levels of perception and certain levels of life, there's a high degree of relativity and there's a high degree of just common sense, basic, that is kind of how it is. And just in the same way we have a lot of free will, we also have a lot of limitation. We have a lot of limitation, we have a lot of freedom. So it's bearing these things in mind and coming to a place where we realize that just the gross short-term consideration actually has nothing to do with love, reverence, or respect, which in my estimation, that would actually be materialism. That would actually be having reverence for this thing, which we call life, which is in here and now and in this physical world, and not falling into the trap of, oh, it's going to be later, it's going to be better then, it's going to be better somewhere else. If I just hate and deny and deny and deny and, minimize and negate, then it'll be better later. Maybe, maybe not. It really depends upon our own belief system. But the important point that I want to make is that, number one, if we are still in the paradox of for and against, then we're still enforcing the same paradox. We're still fighting the same battle. We haven't actually devised a solution or really changed anything. We're actually just supporting we're supporting what we're trying to deny by denying it, basically. And the second most important thing is that it really comes down to what I was saying about creating value for ourselves, for other people, and making a decision to invest our time and energy wisely because we actually have respect and reverence for being alive, for the gift and the opportunity that we have. And then understanding the third piece, which is our awareness and our intent and our consciousness has a direct relationship with the physical world and the world that we experience. So it's really up to us to decide what that's going to be. Is it going to be just scarcity? Is it just going to be fear and negation and hatred? Or is it going to be something different? And that's basically up to us because life, reality, our perception, our reticular activating system, whatever you want to call it, will mirror that back. And if we really want to, create something that is more sustainable, I think it's basically going to come down to those things. And I think if we really investigated the lives of people who actually contributed something to the world or changed something in the world or initiated some kind of positive transformation, if we looked at them, we looked at their life, looked at their decision-making process, we looked at their belief system, we would probably find that it would be something a bit different than just basic denial and hatred and complacency and apathy and, just trying to negate some kind of paradox. Look at the lives of Buckminster Fuller, Albert Einstein, Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy. The list could just go on and on and on with tons of people that have made massive contributions to the world, and their mindset was something just a bit different than the norm. And also, if this is the last thing I'll say, if we wanted to even just get into the whole Buddhist side of things, which is basically negating the physical world and pointing out how it's not real, and pointing out how it's all transitory and extremely conditioned. Most people interpret that as, again, more hatred, but that's, I think, just carrying over their initial bias, and that's probably not what the teachings originally even contained or pointed to. Because to see through something, but to still, hate it, is one thing. To see through something and to be able to let it go is another thing, which allows for more freedom and flexibility and creativity. So that is how to get outside the trap of materialism without hating yourself, without hating the physical world and hating other people. Because personally, to be very blunt, a lot of the belief systems and paradigms that are out there in the world right now are based in a lot of self-hatred, meaning a person deeply disliking themselves and living a life that is disrespectful of their core self, their core being, who they originally are, and which is fine, which is a natural process. However, people like that get on pedestals and spread information, then it's different, a different situation, which could be useful to have some awareness around. And a lot of this stuff is invisible. We don't see it because it's who we are, but that's part of the process too. So that's my 1.5 cents. Hopefully it's been helpful. Hopefully, most importantly, you actually integrate some of these things into your life and try it out for yourself and experiment for yourself to see if there's any value there. Either way, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully it makes sense. Subscribe to my channel, like the video, share the video, post a comment, and I'll talk to you soon.